Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the latest TravMedia Meets, and today we are meeting the Telegraph. We're delighted to have them with us today. I'm Henry Hemming, Managing Director of TravMedia. Thank you so much for joining us on this cold but no longer snowy, hopefully, Monday morning in February. So, as you know, TravMedia has had meets with various teams, but I think we've reached a new pinnacle. We've got the top 3 people at the Telegraph's travel section with us today. And before I do a little bit of kind of housekeeping, I'd just like to give them the chance to actually say hello. So thank you for joining us. Claire Irvin, the head of travel. Claire, great to see you.
Hi. Lovely to see you too.
Great to see you. And Ben Ross, deputy head of travel at the Telegraph. Lovely to have you here today, Ben.
It is a joy to be here. Hello.
A joy it is. And Nick Trend, the consumer and culture editor of the Telegraph. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
Hi, nice to be here.
Good. And thank you to all of you who are with us on Zoom. We have had a wonderful registration for today's event with very nearly 300 people wanting to know more about the Telegraph's travel focus, its travel footprint, what it looks for, and of course, for people in the audience, a little bit of a reveal about how they work most effectively with the travel and tourism PR community. How can you most effectively engage with the Telegraph? And my job will be to ensure that, as advertised, this is a pulsating hour ahead, and to make sure we get through as many questions as possible. So we need questions. What do we need? We need questions. So do post questions on Zoom's Q&A. We'll try and get through as many as we possibly can. Just in case I don't know who you are, can you put your company name at the end of the question? That would be marvelous. I'd also like to say thank you to everyone who sent in questions in advance. We've had an awful lot of interest for today. Also, do get social. We are hashtag TravMedia Meets, at TravMedia_UK, and of course at Telegraph Travel. I think we've chosen a pretty good day for today's event, Monday, February the 15th. It's been tough, but we did hit a fantastic landmark yesterday with the government's target of 15 million vaccinations by mid-Feb achieved. An amazing job by the NHS, and I'm sure that's put a smile on people's face. And maybe, just maybe, people can begin to think about the idea of booking travel and enjoying travel after, you know, one of the toughest years in our lives. So I think this is a wonderful, wonderful time to greet the Telegraph team and talk about all the issues involved. Yeah, get posting those questions. Let's turn to the team now, and I'll just introduce them one by one. So Claire Irvin, head of travel, comes from a background in consumer magazine editor of She Company, Sugar, editor at large of Grazia, described as one of the 50 most influential women in the UK by none other than the Times. That was very generous of the Times. Not sure when they said that. And now heads up the Telegraph's travel footprint. Lives in rural Cambridgeshire with a family, ponies, goats, and a long-suffering cat. And apparently today, tree surgeon. So you may hear them in the background. Deputy head of travel and in charge of the Telegraph's editorial travel content is Ben Ross, who joined the paper in 2014, having previously headed up travel on the Independent on Sunday, and the Eye beforehand. And last and certainly not least, because he's been with the Telegraph for a mere 25 years on travel, we have Nick Trend joining us, their chief consumer and culture editor. Writes regularly for the wider pages, including a weekly column on topical travel issues. So lovely to have you here. Claire, I'm going to hand to you. Please do tell us about the Telegraph's travel focus and how our audience can be of service.
Hi everyone, and thanks so much to so many of you for joining us today. It's always really lovely to connect directly with you and for so many at the same time. So thank you, Henry. Yeah, I thought I'd just start by just talking a little bit about how we currently work. And as so many of you will know, that tends to change as the news agenda dictates. And but the bedrock of what we do is our readers. So they don't change, they just hopefully grow in numbers. It's a really wide and diverse demographic. Really, we pull in readers from all over the Telegraph, and no matter what their politics, no matter what their age, we have some very passionate travellers aged from anything 8 to 80 plus. We're very lucky that they are they have the budget. A lot of them have got a lot of time, and they really like to explore with that time and money. So the one thing that never changes is our mission statement and how we serve those readers. And so I thought I'd just quickly take you through some highlights of that, because that is fundamental to everything we do. And no matter what's going on in the world around us and what's demanded, what our readers are demanding from us in terms of frequency and type of content, this is what we aim to do for them, which is we have a team, we're very lucky, it's a big team, and it's full of really amazing award-winning journalists, and we see our job as taking our readers on an exhilarating journey through inspiring lands. Now that something to hang on to in current gloomy times, with a nod to Henry's very cheery intro, to discover holidays and experiences that are perfectly suited to the individual. It's the home of the UK's highest quality inspirational travel journalism. I certainly won't disagree with that. And Henry, you're right. The Times said that about me before I joined their closest competitor. News, features, advice, interviews, first-person stories, analysis, comment, data, interactive tools, all from the best writers in the business. And you'll see from that just sort of broad description of what we do, that nowhere is there travel writing's really hard to do well, which is something I hear mentioned across the newsroom quite often. We think that travel writing is formed of all of these different formats, and is the most fundamentally absorbing and enticing and engaging content you can read, not biased at all. So we also aim to help our readers make the most of life, spend their money wisely, broaden their horizons, laugh, it's fun, and thoroughly enjoying their well-earned time off. And of course, as many of you know, we are extremely lucky to work for a subscriptions focused business, which means that as journalists, our focus is, how do we engage our readers? How do we make them want more? How do we make them stay longer? And really, that is, the quality of what we do is our everything. So it's an extremely brilliant place to work as a journalist. Now, there is to Henry's point about the three of us being here, there is two other very key people in terms of how we work, and that's Oliver Smith, who keeps a slightly lower profile with the PR industry, or has done until this year, certainly not low profile internally, I might say, and Jade Conroy, who many of you will know. Now, we really, between us, we are very focused on multi-platform ideas. And at the moment, we are working more closely together than we ever have been. Our model is very much long lead features under Ben, live digital features under Ollie, and the reviews and guides under Jade. Well, never this year have those been more combined than ever, and this is something that we will be increasingly working on moving forward. So at this point last year, we were working very happily, providing and turning ideas into amazing bi-weekly print sections. We were writing daily news and analysis and sort of smaller bite-sized inspirational pieces to go online and in print. And of course, we were updating and maintaining 10,000 hotel reviews, 125 destination guides, all to be the most expert, independent resource for our readers as possible. And those kind of created a very efficient ecosystem. our review engagement would lead to really great exclusives, which of course would make amazing splashes in print, which would lead to incredible engagement online. You know, it's very thought through. Then of course the world turned upside down, and we very quickly had to think quite hard about what we were doing, as with every travel desk around the world. I was very focused on not resorting just to armchair travel. Of course, we did a few bits and pieces of how you could dream and plan and book while you were at home. But really, we just wanted to, you know, we didn't want to give up. We wanted to keep people thinking about actual travel and doing actual travel where they could. And so as we reported online on everything that was going, and at the time, depressingly, many things closing, we saw that there was this real need and real absolute desire and appetite from our readers for minute by minute travel news. You know, the great thing we can all take from this, as and when we can all start traveling again, is that appetite for travel led to some of the highest engaged features in the newsroom. We led the news agenda throughout 2020, and the minute that any booking was possible, we were seeing surges. You know, there was heightened emotions. I mean, you know, it hasn't been a very optimistic place to be, but if you are looking for optimism as somebody working in the industry, go further than our readers, because the pent-up demand there has been incredible. So anyway, so we, as you all know, we launched the live blog. We pivoted the team, brilliant inspirational features journalists into news journalists, and absolute total props to my team, who have all turned into amazing news hungry, exclusive hunting journalists, and who you know, who've made that happen throughout 2020, and you know, really no mean feat, whilst also of course working remotely and having to get heads around tech and lockdown and all sorts. So so now the way we work, or the way we were working in 2020, was very much as a news team. You know, we were starting work at 7 o'clock, we were having news meetings by 7:30, we had blogs up and running by 8 o'clock, and then we were you know, managing reaction to whatever the headlines were, as well as trying to move the stories on, give the human side of it, keep our readers booking. So I think lots of you will have had more contact with the live team than you might have done in previous years, because we've been on the phone. What do you think? Tell us what you think. We need to know now. So so yeah, so that kind of changed pace and changed relationships with everybody. Now we're in lockdown again. Travel is still dominating the news agenda to such an extent that we, but also with an eye on what's going to be happening for the rest of this year as we come out of lockdown, as you know, 15 turns to 20, 25, 30 million people vaccinated, is we really need to start shoring up that inspiration again. So we are now working more with the news team. Some of you may now have contacts in that news team, because what we want to do is we want to support the news team in getting those, you know, those exclusives, whilst we can then focus on what we were originally very good at, which was getting people off around the UK, around the world. So so I'm going to hand over to Ben to talk more about the longer lead commissioning, because of course that's going to affect a lot of you. But what I would say in terms of what we are, whatever happens, what we are looking for is you know, is content that will work across all platforms. You know, we consider ourselves pretty good at deciding how and what. Don't pitch us digital or print features. That's just not how we work or how we think. Great ideas are what we are after. We want really slick, quick response. You know, while it's what I understand that the you know how difficult it can be working with clients, particularly clients in with you know, rabbits in headlights, businesses crumbling, 101 priorities. You need to work out some way of working with them that means we get comment same day. It's not as much use to us the next day, because the news agenda will have moved on. And just keep the faith. Let's keep looking ahead to when we can all book. We do need those stories, just because we can't travel anywhere. I get so many questions every single day. Are you still commissioning? Yes, we're commissioning. Yes, we've still got budget. Yes, we're still here, touch wood. And, yes, we want to hear from you. So it's best if you think of things in terms of, is this a long lead commission, i.e. does it involve quite a lot of planning, a tour operator, maybe an airline, sending somebody somewhere? Is this an idea that could be, so that would be Ben, is this an idea that can be turned around today, that somebody could just write? Then that's Ollie. Is this more hotel, destination, guide focus? Then go to Jade initially and her team with that. On that, I will hand over to Ben, who will talk through the long lead element of that. Hopefully I've covered off live and evergreen, but you can always ask questions about that as the webinar continues. I've talked enough. Ben, over to you.
Thanks, Claire. I think one of the things that I've noticed most during the pandemic has been the need for what we calling the long lead team to react in an extraordinarily unusual way to what's going on, because never before have we had to put our finger in the wind and find out whether we think a story is going to work next week or the week after to such an extent that the narrative changes so quickly. And that narrative is to do with what consumers want. It's also to do with what the government tells us. And dealing with that has been, I think, an education from my point of view, and also a really good experience from a journalistic perspective. Watching the wind change on a weekly basis means that we've had to make sure that we think that the stories we're going to be running in a week's time will still be appropriate then. And that's almost the hardest thing that a long lead team can adjust to and has to have experience of. Equally, I think it's one of the more interesting parts of the pandemic from an editorial perspective, that we've all got a bit better at understanding that what we're experiencing now is not going to be something that we're necessarily going to be worrying about in a month's time. So I was very conscious 2 or 3 weeks ago that the discussions that were happening in government and editorially were absolutely focused around whether or not summer holidays were going to happen. That's the thing. That we were still in January, and everyone wanted an absolute answer about whether it was time to be booking a summer holiday and whether people would be able to go away this year. Now, one of the things that we were very quickly aware of is, given the course of the pandemic and the way things have changed so quickly, there's no sensible solution or sensible answer to that at that point. What we needed was to respond to the environment we are working to, but also keep a weather eye out on the fact that by the end of February, those answers will have changed dramatically. So a good example of that would be the story that we're going to be running this weekend, which is about the summer holiday conundrum. Now, that story will be commissioned, is being written by my colleague Nick Trend, who's maybe here to my right or above me, or wherever you're looking at him on the screen. And one of the things that we discussed a huge amount about is the appropriateness of what you write now, as opposed to what you would have written last week or last month, and what you would need to be writing in a month's time. In a way, it doesn't matter. We're a newspaper. We want to be reacting to events we want to be delivering, but we also want to offer that advice piece, the sense that we're offering a resource to our readers. So with this story that you'll be able to read about on Saturday, if not before online, we've tried to divide concepts up. We've tried to divide the narrow avenue that you're working through if you're a consumer and you're trying to book a holiday. And this is all the sorts of stuff that from a PR perspective, you'd need to be telling us about. If I book now, will things be, what will happen to my money when the deposit is required, when the final balance is required? If I book later, will things be more expensive? Is this destination likely to be on track? Is this destination likely to be on track? Now, what we're trying to do there is offer the beginnings of a strategy for readers that they'll be able to return to again and again and again. So if we offer advice that says at this point in time, it is, let's say, extremely unlikely that you will be traveling to Australia in 2021, which I think it would be fair to say that is the case. Later in the year, we'll obviously be updating that advice and making sure that's moving on, and we'll be able to develop it. And I think that sort of synergy that Claire's been talking about, the idea that one piece can start off, a story can start off as one thing and develop and evolve into another, is almost the most exciting thing that we've learned and we've experienced during the course of the pandemic. And there's very little in terms of good news that you could take out of this, but from the point of view of journalists doing their jobs and trying to develop ideas and trying to make things happen. I think it's been a great learning process for us all. I've certainly, I think, become a better journalist as a result of the pandemic in terms of what I think about and what I deliver on. And I think we've all had to keep boxing clever about that. And I think if I was trying to get a message across in terms of communications and the way we work together as a creative partnership between PR and editorial, that's what I'd aim at. It's really developing what Claire said, is this sense that in this ever-changing dynamic, where we can't predict what's going on next week from what we did last week, which is always the great thing about travel. We have that cycle. Booking time was in January and February. Holiday time was in July. Let's start ski in October. You know, all that sort of stuff that we've given. You know, I've been commissioning for 20 years. This sort of world that this is going to happen forever and ever. That all changed, and I think in a way we might be able to be cleverer in the future in the way we discuss those stories. So, you know, the one thing that we can take from this, if January 2021 is rock bottom for travel, if that was the point where really we weren't going anywhere, we were all in lockdown, foreign holidays were absolutely seemed to be off the cards. I think the one thing that we can take from that is that from now on, there will always be a good PR reason to be writing a story. Things will be coming back on track. Destinations will recover at whatever stage, at whatever speed. I'm not saying it's happening tomorrow. And each time one of those things happen, each time there's a new flight route reconnecting Britain with France or with Italy, that's a great reason to be running a story. And really for the prospects of getting your clients in front of our readers, the next 6 months, you choose your moment as best you can, and then you realise that there's going to be a news hook. And that sort of sense of dynamism and change, that should offer positivity going forward. And it's also something that I think we've all learned over the past year. Nick,
over to you for your thoughts.
Well, I mean, I do think, I'm just going to be really echoing, I think, what Claire and Ben have said, but I think in a way, the fundamental change which has happened for us, we've always, as a travel section, as a website, we've always combines inspiration with consumer and practical and trustworthy advice where best we could. But now I think there's been a fundamental split, so that because for so long in the last year or so we haven't been able to travel at all, some of our stuff has essentially been pure escapism. It's been people writing about trips that they did maybe 10 years ago which changed their lives or were fundamentally wonderful in some particular way. And the rest of what we've done has been very, very driven by practicalities and the realities of trying to plan through a very complex real world situation. So we've gone from a time when we would do lots of inspirational stories with lots of sort of subsidiary practical advice as to how you could do it for yourself, to a situation of where on earth can we go and how can we do it, and what are the risks associated with it. And I think just picking up on what Claire was saying, I can't remember, to be honest, how long we've actually been, most of our stuff has been behind, not all our stuff is behind the paywall, but with a couple of years probably that most of our advice has been.
Actually, I think it was only last year that we really, 2019, I should say, that we really
right.
went to about 70%. Yeah.
But that's been really helpful for us in a way, because we people will only pay if they really want to read things, and that really helps us, I think, focus on that, on what we're giving people for their money. And I think one of the things we offer them is trust. The readers trust us, and we are always very, very careful to make sure that we're looking at the current situation, or the situation over the last year or so, from the reader's point of view. If this was our money that we were spending on going on holiday, how would we react in this situation? And that's really the philosophy behind what Ben was describing, the piece we're trying to write on Saturday, which is about how you navigate your way through that. And I think we do have an advantage, because I think readers do sense that. They realize that we're on their side. We're not just blindly promoting holidays. we have to be very careful. I'm very sympathetic to the travel industry. I think I've tried to do my best in my various comments and campaigning pieces over the last year to understand the difficulties that many companies are in at the moment, about people's jobs are on the line, their businesses are fundamentally threatened by what's going on. But ultimately, we represent the consumer interest, and I think that will always inform what we do. And from the point of view of your audience, I think it's something which many PRs do understand, but it's a fundamental thing to what we do. So we will only promote stuff which we believe is sensible and in the reader's interests and at the right time for them. We're not just a poster site for a company's latest tours or holidays or hotels, whatever. We do try to approach things from an analytical point of view, and I think in the end that benefits everyone. You know, if you read a review on Amazon and it's completely glowing with no element of criticism to it, then you're less likely to trust one which says, well, this is a great product, but actually you might want to think about these slight disadvantages before you buy it. So I think that tone is very important to our coverage, and it's just become more and more important over the last year because so many people face so many practical difficulties, anxieties about whether their money's safe, trying to get their money back, and so on. But hopefully we're now navigating our way out of it, and Saturday's front, as Ben said, is basically the beginnings, I hope, of our own route map to how people will be able to start booking holidays again.
Just very briefly, the one thing I would add to that is that there's also the reactive part of that from our readership as well. We have tremendous amounts of data as well in terms of what we know about our readers. So we are in a good position to, as Nick says, we want to make sure that we're being authoritative with them, but we also know exactly what they like. We've got very, very good tools in terms of understanding what our readers are engaging with and what they're interested in, which means we are in a much better position when commissioning great stories to know that a story is going to work really well.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, team. We have got no end of questions here. My question for Nick is, did you change your surname by deed poll when you first became a consumer journalist?
No, it's a real name.
It's a real name. It's a bloody good one. Bloody good one. Okay, so I've had some fantastic questions coming in. Let me start with Emma Devada. I hope I've pronounced that correctly, from Director of PR at Black Tomato, who says, given the government advice around not booking summer holidays yet, hopefully any day now, any feedback from the Telegraph team on how you will intend to balance international and inspirational with UK domestic and staycation? You know, what's your focus for the next few weeks, and when do you expect to see a shift? And I think probably Nick's excellent article on vaccinations yesterday gives an awful lot of advice about what people should book and when. But let's kick off there. Claire, what's the focus right now, and when will it shift, do you think?
Well, I mean, we're really lucky in that we can respond very quickly to all shifts by virtue of the fact that we have this enormous resource of evergreen destination guides and content. We've always really pushed the UK. Our readers love holidaying in the UK. They love a staycation. We have a huge wealth of inspiration around that. 2020 probably saw peak UK interest, so we were able to do a lot more then as well. You know, it's not, I'm not trying to get out of answering this, but we will respond to what's going on with the right stuff. So, you know, we don't have to focus on UK or the world. We can focus on both. And, you know, in fact, the feature that Ben's referring to is also looking at whether you where you want to holiday. We've just ran a story by Hattie Garlick, a comment which led into an event that we ran at the Telegraph, looking at whether you as a family you should be looking to stay in the UK or go away. And we were, you know, I think we give lots of inspiration of and how to, when to, and how do I, to all possible open destinations. Now, we normally do that for the whole world. So at the moment, you know, really anywhere that's open, we are focusing a huge amount of effort on. So we won't, but the answer to your question is we will not be doing either or. We will ensure that wherever is open to our readers to travel, we will be giving them lots of different options for types of holiday, lots of different options for the type of traveller they are, lots of different options for the budget that they have available.
Yeah.
I think government advice will be a big thing as well. Obviously, we're waiting for Boris Johnson to give us some announcements, and that may well indicate some sort of pathway and some sort of responsive target from an editorial perspective. But I would also just throw into the mix that the chances are, in terms of the way things unlock down, we will be looking close to home, primarily in the UK, and then moving off and having our focus sort of expanding around Europe rather than diving straight into an awful lot of content on places further afield. But yes, Claire's absolutely right. The great thing is we've got so many platforms, and we work across all those platforms, that we can deliver very, very clearly and coherently as many stories about Europe unlockdowning when it happens as we can about the UK.
Yeah. And I think you just give your readers that mixture that they need of kind of dreamy, heartwarming, from Adrian Bridge dipping his toes in the baths in Budapest, and a little reminder at the end that, traveling at this time might not be advisable, right the way through to, your hard-hitting vaccination, your lead story on Saturday, have vaccine, will travel, that sort of thing. It's a perfect mix. So,
remember, our readers are very intelligent. They don't need to be spoon-fed. They understand whether things are open or whether they can't do things. We will talk them through it all, but they're there. They're bright people. They want to holiday, and they want to holiday at an appropriate time.
But also they have, I think the market has fragmented even more. There's always been, the more gung-ho, braver traveller and the more cautious traveller. And now that's become much more subtly defined by people who've had their vaccinations but are still nervous, people who are fundamentally nervous, people who are completely gung-ho, people who just want to wait a little bit, people who want to plan ahead and get something. It's a very, very fragmented consumer market out there, I think. And we're lucky to have so many avenues that we can reach them through, but I think we have to address many more types of people than we used to.
It must have been hard doing that story for this Saturday ahead of next Monday's announcement, Nick.
Yeah, well, you get used to it after a year of constant changes. So.
Excellent. Cornwall, a couple of questions on Cornwall here. We've got Julie at La Fontaine PR, Julie Giraud. Oh no, sorry, that's a separate question. I've lost it. Chris Penfold at Barefoot Media saying, with all the attention Cornwall has been getting recently, G7, Staycation Boom, and every other TV show, and Amanda Holden, I think you should add, please, Chris. Is the Telegraph still keen to cover Cornwall, or is it overblown? Ben, would you like to answer that one?
We covered the holidays that you should be booking in Cornwall last week. I mean, yes, of course, we will continue to cover Cornwall as one of our readers' favourite UK destinations. I think one of the things we've been very conscious of is the possibility that parts of the UK will, over the course of this year, potentially become more crowded as a result of people not traveling quite as much abroad. So I would say yes, we'll absolutely be covering with Cornwall, but I would also suggest that we will be making sure our readers are aware of the wealth of opportunities beyond Cornwall that they could be looking at. We've done various things recently about just sort of making sure if your first thought is Cornwall, but you're worried about it being potentially too busy, here are some alternatives that you can get that sort of holiday from. And I think we'll probably carry on doing that as much as possible. Cornwall is a tremendous destination. I will be going there in the summer, but there are many other options open, as I hope we all understand, and the Telegraph's job is to make sure that our readers know about them.
Yeah. Well, and the other question we had on Cornwall, by the way, was from Louise Midgley, just pointing out that the G7 summit is going to be down there, and wondering if it's going to be a hot time for you. But let's get on to staycations. Evie Kennedy says the hysteria around staycations, they're selling out so fast. Do you know how long, this is more crystal ball gazing, I'm afraid, but how long do you think you'll have a focus on staycations in the Telegraph's pages? And Joe Kendall of Rooster says, how do you make staycations stand out for UK travel brands with the Telegraph's editorial team? So tell us what your interest is on staycations, please.
Well, I think one of the ways which we approached it, one of the strongest ways which we approached this last year, was to start off by actually showing our readers how you have a staycation, because there are people who holiday frequently in the UK. There are many people who would not have previously considered the UK as their main holiday destination. So you know, the first and foremost, it was like, this is possible. It is an amazing destination. And we then looked, we didn't just go by destination and honeypots. We looked at all the, and actually this is something we've been doing, you know, since the dawn of time, but a very recent series, a pre-pandemic series, was World on Your Doorstep. So we were looking at the different types of holiday readers might like to do abroad, whether it might be a safari or a beach holiday or an adventure trip, and actually look at how you can do those kind of things and where you do those in the UK. So that approach inevitably leads readers away. Well, it will also encompass non-honeypot destinations. We have lots of different inspiration on alternatives too. So if somewhere's too booked up or too busy for you, here's where to look for a similar vibe, a similar hotel, a similar kind of holiday. So I think we are pretty responsible in terms of giving our readers that really expert inspiration that they seek. But we're also quite responsible in spreading the love, you know, so we don't want everybody hating on tourists in Cornwall, and equally anyone who goes to Cornwall might like to be able to park, you know, so it's the sure that we get the right inspiration to the right reader, and that means that's a massive remit, but we do our best. Nick and Ben, I'm sure you've got stuff to add to that.
I think with somewhere like Cornwall, it's you know, there's a reporting job, always going to be a reporting job to do there, because it's full for the school holidays. But as Ben says, there are alternatives which you could try instead, or there are different times when you could visit, or different ways you can visit. So it's one of the most popular destinations in the country, so we would always look to cover it, but it will probably be tending to be from a more practical proposition now, I think, than a, hey, why don't you try a family holiday in Cornwall because the beaches are great sort of piece, if you know what I mean. So it'll be trying to guide people through the particularly sticky issues of this year that I think will be foremost in our mind at the moment. Does that make sense?
Staycations in general are something that we've always had a focus on. I mean, I don't think that feels as though there's been a huge difference. We've been very responsible about our coverage of the UK because we think it's an amazing opportunity for people. And the other thing that we know from the data that we read from our Telegraph readers and users of the website is that they expect to have a UK holiday every year in the same way that they expect to go abroad. And it may well be that this year the balance shifts towards staycations rather than spending quite so much time in foreign climes. But you know, we already have form in this, and we'll be continuing to do that. Referring back to the stuff I talked to at the top of this discussion, we're going to be responding to the fickle changes of COVID and government policy and tour operator response.
And also remembering that Britain isn't just about beaches and national parks. You know, a lot of people won't be able to travel. A lot of people like city breaks, for example, probably won't be able to travel abroad terribly easy this year. So there are lots of alternatives for that in the UK, which hopefully we'll be able to focus on too.
So an interesting question from Minty Woolgar, who is with Oyo Hotels. It's all, and this is framed in terms of the Telegraph reader, not the whole traveling public. What's the post-lockdown traveller trend going to be with the Telegraph? Is it going to be once in a lifetime blow the budget trips because we've been incarcerated? Or is it going to still be the kind of ethical, slow, sustainable route that was really becoming, you know, pretty important pre-lockdown? What does anyone think it will be? Maybe Claire, you could kick off there.
Well, I think in terms of trends, we're seeing both. So, you know, we have been inspiring our readers around the big ticket. You know, we run the 1,000 Dream Trips. We've got really amazing resource online for that. But and we know that they're booking those. You know, they have lucky readers, but you know, many of them have now almost 2 years worth of budget to throw at you know, their travel. So we know that big ticket trips are going to be really important, but also, you know, I mean, I probably speak for all of us here. We know we're all desperate to get away for a night in a hotel. You know, I mean, when we look at July the 4th last year, the first day out of lockdown, you know, people were just wanting to get away. So I think we're going to see both. I think we're going to see you know, people with those, you know, great itineraries and long held dreams, but also just that wish to explore anywhere. And, you know, I think both of those is great for the travel industry. I think the trends will be around how people travel. You know, we're looking at, particularly for the big tickets, we're looking at hotel chains who are offering those kind of those bubble holidays. You know, I think multi-generational trips will be very important, because grandparents haven't seen grandchildren, you know, may be less affected by economic dips, will be wanting to take their family somewhere safe and contained. So we're seeing kind of villa holidays being very popular. So I think it's not just about the type of trip, it's how they do that trip that we'll be seeing.
Yeah.
What do you think, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I think trends are a difficult thing to sort of commit to at this point, and obviously, really just referring back to everything we've talked about so far, we're quite a broad church in terms of what we aim things at. I would, as Claire says, you know, 1 week we may well be talking about blow the budget, extraordinary things for people to be doing, but the trend, I think that the overarching trend before COVID was very much for more responsible travel, and I think the Telegraph would always be behind. Even if people are blowing the budget, they're spending the money on something that doesn't create unnecessary harm to the planet. We understand that travel is something that has a carbon footprint, and it can be environmentally deleterious, but it also sustains populations. It provides work, it provides employment to people, and that's very, very important around the planet. So I think if we're talking about blowing the budget, we can easily incorporate in that the idea that you want to be traveling for a long time, making sure that you're taking as few air transits as possible, and making sure that you're giving back and getting something from a destination that changes you as a person. We write a lot about experiential travel, and we've been one of the things that we've done a lot over the last couple of years is putting the person and the things they want to get out of a holiday at the heart of the stories that we write, certainly in a good proportion of the pieces that we do. That sort of transformational travel is always going to be something that our readers are interested in. I think if we can put that at the forefront of what people talk about after COVID, that travel should not be about arriving quickly, skimming the surface of the places and disappearing immediately afterwards. It should be about investing in time and making sure that you as a person gain something from the journey that you make. It sounds highfalutin and a bit silly, but I think if we want to get anything good to come out of COVID and the changes that we're all experiencing, then that sort of mindfulness will be a great asset.
And finally, what do you think will be the trend, Nick? Trend?
See what he's doing there, Nick?
Yeah, it's clever. It's clever. I just don't think we know. You know, I don't think we know whether people are going to travel for longer because the risk of quarantine when they get back means that they don't want to travel so often. So, you know, they want to go for 3 weeks instead of 2 and just do 1 trip a year instead of 2. I think it's a pretty good chance people will want a big faction of people will want to stay secure and cruise from British ports or take their cars into France. I think there will also be opportunists out there who who think this is a great time to visit some of those, I keep banging on about this in the section, I know, but sites like Venice and Rome and Paris, which, you know, are almost returning to a local state. I don't think you're going to get the Southeast Asian tourists coming back for quite a long time, you know, who are big visitors of those kind of classic sites. I don't think you're going to get the Americans this year. I don't think you're going to get that many British people traveling abroad. So it's going to be, I think in the short term, there'll be some really interesting trends. And in the long term, we don't know. I think it's just going to depend so much on how we learn to live with this virus, how it mutates, and also on the travel industry, to be honest. I mean, I'm quite anxious that we're going to lose some travel companies. We might even lose airlines. And I think if that happens, prices will probably go up. It may be compensated by the fact that hotels will just have to be cheaper because there's going to be far too many hotel rooms for the number of tourists in a lot of these places, I think. So I just think it's going to be, you know, a fascinating couple of years to see how things adapt this year, how much pent-up demand there is, what sort of holiday people want. And one of the things I always say is that you guys out there who work either directly for travel companies or as consultants to travel companies, what Ben said a bit earlier is true. We know a lot about our readers, but you also know a lot about our readers too, because they book with you. You see the bookings coming in. We don't know when people actually book. We don't know how much they're spending. We don't know how far ahead they're booking. I was talking to someone at a long haul tour operator yesterday who said, last week, who actually said that they're probably as booked up as they would normally be at this time of year, but the lead times are massively longer. So people are booked well into 2021. I doubt that'll be a long-term trend, but it's certainly one that's happening at the moment.
Okay, very, very interesting indeed. So I think we're going to get down to having to do quick shout outs, but I've got longer questions from three people, but there's something in common with all of them. So James Mundy, who says the Telegraph's travel pages are certainly the most lively travel pages at the moment, in his opinion. He and Claire Jackson at Mason Rose and Lindsay Devon, the founder of Heaven Publicity, all wonder. I should say James Mundy, by the way, is from inside Japan, inside Asia. They're all wondering about previously written travel stories that are in the bank at the Telegraph. Will they see the light of day when conditions allow?
Yes.
Yeah, that's my world, I think, more than anyone else's. But I mean, yes. I mean, we've been working through the backlog that we have, and actually I've been very glad to have it, because it's been very useful in terms of making sure we've got good content that we can produce with our brilliant writers. I'm being quite careful about how we run stuff in terms of print, just to make sure that there's a decent reason to be running things at the moment. I think when we do unlock and there's lots of Japan content that we need to be running, then if it's stuff that we've already got, then that will need to be revisited, and we'll make sure that it's appropriate for now. Quite often that will involve a bit of rewriting from the writers themselves. But you know, I think absolutely we should be using the content that we've got, and it would be foolish, not least from a cost perspective, for us not to.
Yeah, good. So yeah, optimism there, chaps. And another one, this was the Julie Giraud question. She's from La Fontaine PR, and also Hannah Garcia at HF Holidays. They both congratulate you on the Telegraph's wonderful podcast series last summer. You know, it's to be expected. It did cease after a while. That's Greg Dickinson. He did interviews with people like Marcel Theroux and Griff Rhys-Jones and many others, Miriam Margolyes. Will we see the Telegraph's podcast coming back under Greg, do we think, Claire?
I mean, we're committed to podcasts. You know, we know our readers like them, and it's more about great ideas and relevance. So yeah, that was a lovely series, did really well. Greg's a great presenter, and when the right idea comes along and it's the right time, we will do it. I mean, we've got lots of ideas that we're looking at, but at the moment, it's that mix of, we've got a great idea, we've got a great journalist, we know the readers will be interested, but what's the right timing? We're not just throwing stuff out willy-nilly. We have so many great ideas, and we have to be careful not to overwhelm and also not just to do things for the sake of it. So the answer is yes, there will be more. Will they be in the same format as that previous series? Possibly not, because why repeat something when you've got other exciting ideas? And yeah, I mean, watch this space. You know, our audience today will, you know, be some of the first to know about that. So yeah.
Great. If I could just beg with you not to end up putting it on Clubhouse as a live stream, that would be amazing. Okay, so a couple more. I've got Surinder Manku at P1 Communications. Loved your piece in January about, this was before the inauguration of the new American president, 50 reasons to visit 50 states. Is the USA trickling back onto the Telegraph's agenda? Because the Telegraph loves the USA historically.
I think the only trick with the USA at the moment is how badly they're experiencing COVID. I mean, it obviously we'll be rushing to write about what is one of the Telegraph readers' favourite destinations as soon as possible. It is just at the moment not. I don't get that. I mean, we had a lovely reason to do it around the inauguration. That felt like we could recharge the batteries a little bit, but I don't think we'll be doing a huge amount on it until we feel as though the news is equivalently good to the UK.
Yeah. Okay.
Our readers' interest in North America certainly has not waned in terms of a destination. So as Ben says, we will be returning to that, but it's just about appropriateness of timing.
Roll on that day. We have an anonymous attendee who says, is the Telegraph interested in travel survey data like OnePoll and others, or do you have a relationship with a surveys provider? Who would like to take that?
We're always interested.
Always interested. Okay.
Can't say we'll always use it. I mean, it will always depend on you know, the results, the topic, what we've been doing, what we've done. Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, and the news agenda that day. But yes, we are always interested. And you know, blog results, survey results are really helpful to us on the blog. You know, they might support a story that we're already running. They are potentially just an interesting post in themselves. So yeah.
Email travelonline@telegraph.co.uk.
Perfect. Yeah. The Olympics, we've got Yumiko Nishitani, who promotes a northeastern Japanese region called Tohoku even, says, at what point might you start looking at Japan features as the Olympics draws nearer? Fingers crossed.
Is that in conjunction with James, I imagine, as well? Look, the Olympics, provided that they happen, will be a great peg for us. I don't really see a reason for us, in the same way that we're dealing with inspirational stories, not to be writing about Japan at the moment, to be honest. I mean, we on the understanding, you know, we put the proviso each time we do a story that travel, you know, there are restrictions in place. It doesn't mean people can't start dreaming and they can't be thinking about it. And as James knows, I have stories that are under backlog at the moment. So we're looking forward to running Japanese stories as soon as possible.
Very good. I've got Paul Sharman from Hebridean Adventures, who says, I picked up from conversations that travellers are beginning to look for something different in terms of their experience, in particular the chance to learn something on holidays, have local experiences, or have local experts leading them on activity. Is the team interested in that type of feature where, you know, local people give you a real experience of, for example, Hebridean living?
Yeah, well, as I did reference that earlier. I think Paul's also asking about whether we see data from it. I mean, in a way, the data is to do with how many tour operators are now offering that sort of experience, and it's certainly increased over the past years. I don't think I could be any more straightforward than that in terms of where we're getting data from. Yeah, I mean, we have a regular slot that we run every week called Travel on Trial, where that sort of connection is often made. Yeah, people are going to learn a skill or meet a particular person in order to find more about the world, or occasionally just to do an insane zip wire from the top of a mountain. But I think yeah, I mean, experiential travel where people are getting more from their holidays is exactly what we should be aiming at and what we are aiming at.
Yeah. Okay, and cruise, obviously an important area to the Telegraph. A lot of cruise lines are putting out 2022 offers and availability and ideas. Caroline Caulfield Rose, who represents Port of Seattle in the UK, says, what's your current feeling on talking about cruise? Nick, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the world's greatest expert on cruise, but I think that our cruisers are experts. Sorry, our readers. Our readers are expert cruisers, and a lot of them either see the advantages of securing things in the really quite far distant future. They'll book cruises 18 months ahead. And a lot of them are also very good at ducking and diving and spotting last minute bargains. So I don't see any issue with us covering cruises departing in 2022. Do you, Ben? I mean, but I think we'll also be looking at much shorter time frames. Cruising is going to be really interesting because when it's so vulnerable to sudden disasters, like one outbreak on a cruise ship early on, like we had last summer when it restarted, and suddenly cruising goes straight back into the doldrums. On the other hand, it's got a great opportunity because if vaccinated only cruises prove to be resilient, then it could be seen as a really excellent opportunity for people to feel quite secure when they travel. So I think we'll be covering cruising from all different time horizons. Wouldn't you agree, Claire, on that?
Absolutely, yeah. I was just going to add, what we've seen from our readers over the last year is a very clear relationship between good cruise news and reader interest, and certainly the top of the pandemic, our cruise news was, leading our engagement figures. There was shock and there was disappointment, and people needed, our readers needed to know about the cruises they'd either booked or had planned. We've seen a very clear drop off in terms of our news features, not our inspiration. Those remain really strong, but a marked interest in cruise news when we are talking about further delays. When there is genuine good news, the engagement goes straight back up again. So what we're taking from that is don't flood the blog with every spit and cough of cruise not happening, but let's focus instead on the inspiration and the booking advice and everything around future itineraries. And as soon as we are finally talking about start dates instead of delayed start dates, we will be ramping up that news again.
And just a final thing on cruise, some real good news from cruises that our supplement is starting again on Saturday. So we're back, which is tremendous, and we will be dealing with cruising for bookings for 2022 in that.
Yeah. Very good to hear. Very good to hear. Caroline Calvert, UK PR Director at the Travel Corporation, wrote to me to say she respects that, Travel Corporation's got a lot of kind of 1835 brands, and respects that it's not in the Telegraph's typical audience kind of franchise. But I mean, I saw yesterday a great article from Sarah Baxter writing about kind of yurts and bunkhouses and wild camping. During the epidemic, has your kind of reach changed to include younger age groups, and would that carry on post-epidemic?
No, I need to be very clear. A very bit younger readership, and they are one of our, I have a presentation which I'm sure I've showed several people who are watching today on our different reader types, and we really attract 18 to 25-year-olds based on the fact that we are, I think, fairly credible. We're on Snapchat, for goodness sake, so they're bumping into us whether or not they necessarily identify the travel content as Telegraph. I don't, but we get huge engagement, and I think that is based on the fact that we, in their eyes, our competitors are influencers. So whilst they will follow influencers for in they come to us for advice, and we find that we have a very strong following in that age group. And then of course, you know, in terms of sort of people in their early 30s, well, you know, we are first port of call for most families when they are looking at their holidays. So I think that we don't have that readership. And thank you, Henry, for giving me a very recent example of how we but you know, the team is full of people other than myself who are under 35, and you know, that they will feed in their own experience and their own you know, their own travel kind of, you know, what drives their love of travel. And I hope that that is as reflected in the pages as it is for our families and older readers.
Yeah, I certainly came across loud and clear from Sarah Baxter's very enjoyable article. Great. Well, Caroline, I think one of your first post-lockdown lunches has to be with the team. We're kind of, I don't know, have you got time for one more question?
Caroline, by the way.
Yeah. Hi, Caroline. If you've got time for one more question, this is again Emma Devada. She just said, any particularly, because we've asked you to, I've cast you in the light of epidemiologists and soothsayers for the whole of this webinar, but actually something just lighter and more easy. She said, any particularly memorable or standout recent PR pitches that you've received that you've really enjoyed? So is there anything from our PR audience that has really kind of stuck with you and engaged you? Claire, do you want to take that first?
Gosh, I think, you know, one of the most resonant threads, I think, to our content last year, and I've just been thinking about it this morning actually as well, was were all the stories of the hotels responding to lockdown and opening up their doors to NHS, to the homeless, and so on. And you know, I have not, you know, although we've perhaps reached a point where, you know, we maybe have more than we need now, I never fail to be moved by those. So that's just a personal thing, and I think, you know, they really resonated in our Brave New World thread with our readers. In terms of bringing destinations alive during lockdown, I think there's been some real really clever ideas, you know, and I think, and I say this not as a necessarily Monday morning, but, you know, wine tastings, I think, have been a really fun way to bring journalists and PRs and clients together when we're all remote. And you know, there's been quite a few things, not necessarily around booze. It's quite experiential travel. It's been a real way to connect with a destination whilst looking at you know, being taken through presentation. Can tell me somebody that's got a great story, and you know, I'll love that. I don't know about Ben and Nick.
Yeah, I can't think of any particular email which has stood out, but I do think that, you know, we do recognise that this has been a pretty good grim time for travel companies. It's been an even grimmer time for travel PRs, and we recognise that. And I do think in many cases it's brought the best out of, you know, travel PRs who've had to think of new lines, try desperately, probably only be paid half their fees, desperately trying to generate some interest. And you know, I hope that we've been reasonably sympathetic in our responses where we can, but it's a tough time, and thank you for all the help you've given us with the stories which we have managed to write.
Very nice. And Ben?
A couple of things. We did a very good piece as a result of someone getting in touch with me to do with someone becoming a travel writer in the Faroe Islands, being what's sort of commanded by our readers, which was a really nice multimedia event, and I think worked very, very well for our readers. And I wouldn't have thought to develop that by sending a writer out there and making that happen without really good contacts for that. And I had a lovely discussion a couple of weeks ago about how one of the things that we'll be looking at when we leave lockdown is the ability to meet people abroad again, to make those connections, those human connections while traveling, to talk about the friends that we met in years gone by, and the fact that travel was often a dynamic for us all in terms of making those wonderful connections. And that came from a really nice conversation with a PR and a sense that has a resolution from a PR perspective, in that yes, there are holidays where it's easy to make friends, group tours and things like that, and that was resonant to her in particular. But also felt like it developed a really nice idea of sort of, a sort of hopeful sense that there is always at its core, travel is one of the greatest things we will ever do. And if we can write a nice story along that basis, where we're meeting people and responding to the human side of travel, then that is a lovely thing. And I'm looking forward to commissioning that story.
Thank you very much, Ben. It certainly brought out the most human in everyone this whole period. And today's webinar has been so engaging. Thank you all. I'm so sorry to Jane Harris of Visit Wales, Georgia Richardson, Michelle Roberts of Bournemouth, Sarah Runnicles, and Bryony Gammon for not having a chance to read your questions out. But I'm glad, Bryony Gammon of Viking, that your 2023 World Cruise has already sold out. That's brilliant news. You've been wonderful panelists. Thanks for sharing your time with us. We'll share your home addresses for wine deliveries with our audience afterwards. Thank you so much, Claire. Thank you so much, Ben. And thank you so much, Nick. It's been absolutely brilliant. Thanks to our audience and for keeping so quiet throughout the audience. That was really appreciated. And we've loved seeing you, and we'll see you on the next one. And let's just hope that things are going to get a little bit better now. Thanks to Ali and Ash on my team as well. And we will see you the next time. Thank you all very much indeed.
Bye.